We're about to start Chapter 2, Fractions and Decimals. But before we jump into Chapter 2, we're going to look at how we can estimate our answers to make sure that we have the correct answer. So you're going to start writing down notes. So in your notebook, please write down, how do you know if your answers are correct? So you guys did this last year, so this is kind of a review. We can estimate our answers. So if I want to multiply 32 times 88, I know that 30 is close to 32 and 90 is close to 88. So I can multiply 30 times 90 because 3 times 9 is 27, 30 times 9 is 2,700. So now I have a quick way to estimate to see whether my answer is correct or not. I'm going to try the same thing with division. So I want to divide 176 by 57. If I'm going too fast, go ahead and hit pause, write down your notes, and then start up the, hit play when you're ready to move on. So sorry about that. So example 2, I want to estimate 176 divided by 57. So I know 180 is close to 176. I know 60 is close to 57. 180 divided by 60 is 3. So we're going to practice some of those. Again, this should be a reminder from last year. So in your notebook, you're going to go ahead and write these 4 questions down. You're going to solve them. So I should see in your notebook tomorrow where you've actually done the work. And then you should see a text screen, a text box on the screen on the right. So you're going to enter in your answers for 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to submit your answers. You can't really move on until you've submitted those answers. So after you're done with that, go ahead and move to the next slide. So now we're going to try to estimate some division problems. So go ahead, again, write these in your notebook. I should see you solving these in your notebook. Please don't say you did it in your head. I want to see the work in your notebook, and then submit your answers on the screen to the right and submit when you're ready to move. So now we're ready to move into 2.1, which is multiplying fractions. So if you see on your screen, we have some common fractions. We have 1/2, 1/4, 3/4, 1/3, 2/3. And then we have some that are not so common, 1/5 and 2/5. So write that in your notes. If you need to pause, pause. When you're ready to move on, hit play. So we're going to practice using some of these fractions. So what is 1/2 of 20? So let's pretend like my brother and I have $20. We have to share it. So I want to know what 1/2 of 20 is. Of really means to multiply. And I can put the 20 in perspective just by putting a 1 below it. So 1/2 of 20 is 10. Now let's say we have $6. My brother and I need to split $6. So what is 1/2 of $6? That would be 3. My last one, what is 1/2 of $2? We only have $2, so how much would each of us get? We'd each only get $1. So maybe you can see some patterns going on here, and hopefully we'll go over the math. So now we have some things that maybe aren't so familiar. So a lot of these you might see in cooking or baking. So I want 1/2 of 1/2. So if I have a half of a pizza, so let's take our pizza. We're going to break it into half. And if I break that into half, I now have 1/4 of the pizza. I now want 1/2 of that 1/4 of my pizza. So again, here's my pizza. I have 1/4 of my pizza. Break that into halves. So I can demonstrate that by breaking the whole pizza into those. So now I have 8 pieces. But I only get 1 of those, so I have 1/8 of the pizza. So now let's try 1/2 of 1/3. That one might be a little bit trickier, so we're going to wait, and we're going to figure out the math. So maybe you can see a pattern. Maybe you can see that I'm multiplying things out here to get my final answers. Okay, so to multiply fractions, you're going to write these steps down. Again, if you need to pause, go ahead and pause the video. And when you want to progress, go ahead and play. So the steps you need to use for multiplying fractions. The first thing you need to do is you need to simplify those fractions. So let's say you have 4/8. So if you have 4/8, you can simplify that to 1 over 2. So we always want to simplify our fractions first. Then I'm going to multiply the numerators times each other. Remember, that's the number on the top of the fraction. Then I'm going to multiply the denominators on each fraction. So that's the bottom. Then I want to make sure my final fraction is in the simplest form. And maybe the directions won't always ask you to do that, but it's kind of an understanding that fractions are always in the simplest form. So when you're ready, we're going to move on. Okay, so some examples. So let's say we want to multiply 1/2 times 3/8. So I want 1/2 of 3/8. So I'm going to go through my steps. First, can I simplify? These are pretty much in the simplest form. Next, I'm going to multiply my numerators. So 1 times 3 is 3. Then I'm going to multiply my denominators. 2 times 8 is 16. So my answer is 3 over 16. I'm going to double check it. Can I simplify that? No. What can go into 16? Can 3 go into 16? No. So that is my final answer. Okay. Now we're going to try a different type of problem. We're going to multiply fractions with common factors. So common factors, when the numerator of one fraction is the same as the denominator of another fraction, you can divide by a common factor. Again, I'm going to give you an example to help support this, so go ahead, write that down, and then move to the next screen when you're ready. So, let me give you an example to help support what we just said. So, let's say we have 3/8, and we want to multiply that times 4/7. So I can kind of see right away that I have a 4 and an 8. So those kind of go together. So I can actually simplify those with a common factor. So I know they both can be divided by 4. So I now have 1 and 2. I'm going to just rewrite this to make it look neater. So I now have 3/2 times 1 over 7. So I've simplified first step. Second step, multiply the numerators. 1 times 3 is 3. Multiply the denominators. 2 times 7 is 14. I can't divide. There's no common factors for those two. So my final answer is 3 over 14. Okay, so now I would like you to try some on your own. So again, you're going to write these in your notebook, and you're going to write the answers in your notebook, and then you're going to submit those answers into the computer. So you should see the screen to the right. After you get your answers, type them in. And I know there's really no division sign, so you can use the backslash. So like, let's say I want 1/2. Use 1/2 to show 1/2. Okay, so my first one is 1/2 times 5 over 6. Go ahead, solve that. My second one is 7/8 and 1/4. My third one is 3/7 and 2/3. And my fourth and final one is 4/9 and 3/10. So make sure you're following the steps that we came up with. Simplify, multiply numerators, multiply denominators, double check to make sure they're in their simplest form, submit your answers, and when you're ready, I'm going to have you move on. Okay, another example. So you have 5/8 of a large bottle of shampoo. So I'm going to try to draw a picture to demonstrate that. So here's my bottle of shampoo. And I want to divide it into 8 parts. So I'm going to divide it in half, because that gives me halves. Then divide those in halves to get 4s. Divide those in halves, and now I have 1/8. So I have 5/8 of a large bottle of shampoo. So I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want 5/8 of that. Okay, so I have that. Sorry about the sound effects. Now I'm going to pour 3/10 of that into a smaller bottle. Well, how can I represent 3/10? Well, luckily, My bottom part is in fifths, and I know if I divide that in half, I get tenths. So I'm going to divide that in half. And I only want 3 of those tenths. So, right, I have 10 parts now. Let's make sure we have 10 parts. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's my 10 parts. Okay, and now I want only 3 of those. So I'm going to take 1, 2, 3 of those. So now I have 3 of those tenths. So if I look at the total bottle of shampoo, and we're just going to continue this up. So if I look at the whole bottle of shampoo, that was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So if I look at the full bottle, I have 16 pieces of the whole bottle. And I have red on 3 of those, so 3/16. So I can look at that drawing a picture, or I can do the math. So I have 5/8 times 3/10. I'm going to simplify so you have common denominators, so I can simplify those. Now I'm going to multiply my numerators. 1 times 3 is 3. I'm going to multiply my denominators. 8 times 2 is 16. So I have 3/16. I got the same answer. So there are 2 different ways to solve this, the mathematical way, or you can draw a picture. And that's probably a great way to estimate your answer. Okay, so now you're going to try one on your own. Okay, so what if you pour 6/10 of that bottle of shampoo into another container? How much of the entire bottle did you pour? So don't forget, we're starting with the 5/8 of a large bottle. Okay, so you have 5/8 of your bottle, and you want to pour 6/10 of that into a smaller container. So go ahead and solve that. Enter your answer onto the right hand, and when you're ready, go ahead and submit your answer and move on. Okay, so now we're going to look at multiplying mixed numbers. Okay, so mixed numbers. So first we're going to estimate our answers. I'll show you how to do that. You're going to make your mixed number into an improper fraction. We'll talk about those terms in a second. Simplify where possible, just like we have been. So the last 3 steps are what we've done before. Multiply your numerators and multiply your denominators. Write that down. So here's my example. Okay, so I want 1/2 of 2 3/4. So I'm going to estimate. So to estimate, if I want 1/2, I'm going to do my estimation way up here in the corner. I want 1/2 of 2 3/4. So can I say 2 3/4 is kind of like 3? So my answer should be close to 1.5. Okay, so now I know about where my answer should be. So first step, make the mixed number into an improper fraction. So 1/2 is not a mixed number, but 2 3/4 is a mixed number. So 2 3/4. To make that into an improper fraction, I multiply 2 times 4, and then I add 3. So 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11, so that makes it 11/4. Okay, so I'm going to multiply times 11/4. Simplify where possible. I don't see anywhere where I can simplify. I'm going to multiply my numerators. I get 11. Multiply my denominators. I get 8. But kind of putting this back into simplest form, I can't leave it as an improper fraction. I have to put it as a mixed number. So 8 goes into 11 once, and I have a remainder of 3/8. So 8, 1 3/8 should be my final answer. Okay, so we're probably going to practice some of these next, I bet. Oh, one more example. So first we're going to estimate our example, 2 3/5. Well, 3/5 is kind of like a half. So I have 2.5 and 3.5. So I have 2.5 and 3.5. So can we say that's almost like 2 times 4? So it's close to 2 times 4, which should be about 8. Okay, so we want to make our mixed number into an improper fraction. So 2 3/5. So we write that up here, 2 3/5. So again, I'm going to take 2 times 5 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So that becomes 13/5. 3.5 becomes 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7, so that's 7/2. We multiply that times 7/2. Do you see any way that you can simplify that? Are there any common denominators here? I don't see any. So I'm going to have to take 13 times 7. So 7 times 3 is 21, carry the 2, so it's 91. So my numerator is 91, and 5 times 2 is 10. But again, that's an improper fraction. I know 10 can go into 91 9 times, and I have a remainder of 1/10. So that's my final answer. So you're going to practice some of those. So, guess not yet. We're going to do another example. So I want to find the area of an air hockey table that is 8 1/4 feet by 4 3/8 feet. So remember, area is length times width. So let's estimate first. So 8 1/4 is like 8. 4 3/8 is like what? 4 1/2. So 8 times 4 is about 32. So we should be at about 32, give or take. So first I want to make into improper fractions. So 8 1/4, that's going to become 33/4, right? Because 8 times 4 is 32, plus 1 is 33. 4 3/8 is going to become, 8 times 4 is 32, so it should become 35/4. So I'm going to multiply these two, 33/4 times 35, over 8. So if I multiply those out, I'm going to get some big numbers. I get 1,155 over 32. And then if I take 1,155 and divide it by 32, I get 36 with a remainder of 3. So I have 36 and 3/32 feet. All right, so we need to do some practice problems. So actually, we're going to throw in a couple practice problems here. So we're going to, you're going to try, first you're going to do question number 6. So we're going to stop.